Well, good morning, everyone. Can we begin our study with a word of prayer? Dear Father in heaven, we are so very thankful for the light that you've been giving us, for the things that we have found in your word, in history. We are thankful, Lord, for the way that you speak to our hearts and bring conviction. We know that our understanding is limited and we need you to guide and direct us. We pray for each person. We know the struggles that many face are very difficult, but they need you. And we just pray that you can bring your presence near and that they can know that you are watching over them and that you have foreseen everything. Thank you for hearing our prayer. And we invite your Holy Spirit in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. So we have had a number of things that we still have not resolved in Judges chapter 5. And we haven't gone through all of it yet, but we're picking our way through it, and then we'll go back. The main thing that we've been addressing is these different tribes. And as I pointed out yesterday, it seems to me that there's this some type of mathematical language that's used here. And we did have, I'm going to have to remember to do this the right way. So Stephen had talked about Issachar, for instance. So we had this, and why is this not working? So we counted Issachar from October 22, 1844, and that brought us to which date, Stephen?
The 7th of November, 2020.
Okay.
That was when Joe Biden was confirmed as the winner.
Right. So we're going to have the confirmation of Joe Biden. And I'm going to have to do it this way. Just hang on. Because I got your diagram here, but I'm just going to download it so that I can avoid some of the problems we had yesterday. There we go. So, so the idea is that we can take the numbering of these tribes and we can use them as spans of time. Now, I wanted to analyze this just a little bit more. So we had this argument, not like a disagreement, but just put forward a series of propositions that if we take these kings that line up, so we have Cambyses, these are the three kings that will yet stand up in Persia. Cambyses, Phalsmyrtus, and Darius the Persian, and the fourth is Xerxes. And then we have the sons of Leah as well that are being lined up: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and then Issachar. And then the presidents: Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden. So this relates to the study that we did on the presidents of the United States. And what we're suggesting here is that Issachar lines up with Biden. And what were some of the symbols that tied Issachar to Biden, besides the fact of just counting them? It was in the blessing, Jacob's blessing on Issachar. So what did we find about Issachar?
His name means man of fire.
The man of fire, which would symbolize Biden.
Yes.
And what about the donkey?
Well, Issachar is a strong ass couching down between two burdens.
Okay. And the donkey would be a symbol of,
Democrat Party.
so the Democratic Party, right? So we could apply that symbol there. It's also a symbol of Islam, right? So we know that there's in the story of Balaam, the ass falls down, right? And so there's this symbol here.
But as we were addressing, the words that are used here for couching down can also be crouching down, or it can be fallen down as well.
Yeah. And the idea is that it can't bear the burden, and there's a double burden placed upon this ass, right? So we could take those as being the other powers that it's caught between. So there are some very good symbolism here that would tie this. Now, when we look here in this line above, who follows Xerxes?
There's some debate. I'm
Yeah.
not there when I was looking at it. Some people list it as Artabanus, and then others say no, he was like he killed Xerxes, but he didn't take the throne.
Right.
And then it would be Artaxerxes who gives the third decree.
Right. Yeah. So nobody denies that Artabanus is there. It's just his significance, right? Whether he actually becomes ruler or not. So that's not known. But I think part of the argument of why they don't include him has to do with Ptolemy's canon, for the most part. But we know Artaxerxes is going to follow Xerxes with Artabanus in there temporarily, in whatever capacity we look at it. Because we don't have Artaxerxes become king as soon as Xerxes is dead. Right?
Correct.
Okay. So that would line up with Biden. So there's sort of a placeholder, per se, if we wanted to look at it that way. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but.
No, that makes great sense, because they admitted with Biden that he was not going to be a strong president, that he was just there as a placeholder.
Yeah.
So one of the other points that I've had to consider in this is this time with Xerxes and Trump. Is that similar to the ending of the 7 good years of Joseph, and Biden the beginning of the 7 bad years?
Okay. What else could we use to, flesh that out a little bit? How would you?
Well,
try to present?
okay, in fleshing that out, what were the events that were happening at the beginning of the 7 bad years? You have the people agreeing to sell their land, their animals, etc., to the government. And isn't that what really has been happening in America since Biden became president? I mean, people are taking out substantial loans, especially the business people, in order to try to survive.
Yeah. Now, we look at this as the Sunday law. That is, we have this 7 years of plenty in that story, but we mark the Sunday law in connection with this 7 years of famine. And we have the 2 years into the famine when Jacob enters into Egypt.
Right.
As part of this structure, the center of the 430 years. And under Trump, we have the pandemic, but it's going to be under Biden that we have the federal mandates, not under
Right.
Trump. Which to me is kind of interesting in that the pandemic typifies the Sunday law, but under Trump he doesn't act as a dictator,
No,
which to me was, the whole thing that everyone was predicting. Trump was going to be just, but of course he's a constitutionalist, so he's not going to step outside the Constitution. He's not going to bring federal mandates. He's going to leave things up to the states. He's not going to act like a dictator, but Biden does.
very much.
So in some ways, is Biden kind of, I don't know how to explain it, maybe a repeat of history of that Sunday law that first happens under Trump, but that we could look at a type of Sunday law during the 7 years of plenty. We don't really see what we normally would say is a Sunday law, though it's setting up things for what's going to happen under the famine. But so I don't know. There's something there that I don't quite put together.
Well, as Stephen put out in this diagram,
Yes.
the first decree occurred under which ruler?
Well, the decree you mean of
To rebuild Jerusalem.
well, that's going to be Cyrus.
Okay. So where's Cyrus in this line? He's outside the line.
Yeah, because he's the time of the end, right? So this isn't the time of the end. This is a period, because you're going to have the second decree under Darius.
Right.
So that's going to be the arrival of the first angel's, or the second angel's message is going to happen under Darius.
Okay. So at this point, we know that the third decree is not going to be under Xerxes.
No,
And we know that the third decree is not going to be under Artabanus.
right.
So are we in a time of preparation in order to be able to give that third decree? To
Yeah,
see
well,
that third decree
yeah.
given?
Yeah, because we're in the time of the second angel's message.
Because that second angel's message began under Darius,
Mhm.
or as we would look at it, under Obama,
Yeah.
and is currently continuing, very much like what we were seeing under this with the Millerites from, what was it, roughly 1842 to 1844?
Yeah, well, yeah. So 42 to 44, because you're starting with the charts and the doors being closed and so forth.
Right.
Normally we put the arrival of the second angel's message now at April 19th, but there's a preparation to all of that. So, I mean, how you define that, I think we've defined it differently at different times, but we can see that there is these events happening before. Where we would put the arrival of the second angel, if you're going to apply it to these leaders, it would have to be under Trump. At least that's, unless we're going to say that it happens. Yeah, I would say it has to happen under Trump, because when Biden comes into power, January 6th, that's going to be midnight. That's going to be raffia.
Well, here again, we're looking, going back to this with Joseph in Genesis. Cambyses, false Smyrtus, and Darius are part of the 7 good years. Under Xerxes, we have the close of the 7 good years. And then as we segue into Artabanus Biden, we're at the beginning of the 7 bad years.
Okay, so let's put it this way. How about during Trump? We do have the 7 bad years begin.
No disagreement.
Right? That is, we have the pandemic. So that would be the famine. right? And that's going to happen under Trump. But maybe Biden would mark the point 2 years into the famine,
All right.
where Joseph and meets with his family. So Jacob comes into Egypt. Maybe that's one way to look at it. I don't know if that's correct or not.
Well, I mean,
Because that's when you're going to have everyone selling their stuff. It takes a little bit of time for that to occur. So you get a famine, but people can kind of survive the first year, right? Because they're just going to buy grain but then they don't have money, so now they have to sell their land. And we had discussion regarding this, where this actually occurs. And we had that as the second year, not like at the end of the 7 years of famine. At least begins in the second year. Do you remember any of that, Stephen, regarding that discussion? Or anyone else?
well,
I have a memory of it.
Okay.
Yes,
but we also have Joseph's two sons being born before the famine came. And that was in Genesis 41:50.
Okay. Yeah, so you're saying Ephraim and Manasseh are born prior to the famine.
Right, because Genesis 41:50, and unto Joseph were born two sons before the years of famine came,
Yeah.
when Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bare unto him.
Mm-hmm. So what are you doing with the two sons as a symbol?
Well,
You marking midnight or something? Or
I don't know if we can mark midnight, but two sons in Joseph's house. I mean, we now have two of the tribes that are going to go into the promised land.
yeah. Okay.
So it's a question as to how we're going to mark them as a symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, so let's just move over to the diagram below. So we're taking the number of 64,300 days, an inclusive count, from October 22, 1844 to November 7th, 2020. So this is the numbering of the tribes of Issachar in Numbers chapter 26. Now, in Issachar gains, I believe, is it 5,009 or 9,900 in that period of time? If I remember, because I think it's normally 54,400 or something like, yeah. So, yeah, because Issachar is 54,400 in Numbers chapter 2 or chapter 1, whichever chapter it is, and then gains 9,900. So one of the things that we're addressing here in this has to do with when it deals with Issachar here, and the princes of Issachar with Deborah, even Issachar, and also Barak. He was sent on foot into the valley, for the divisions of Reuben were great thoughts of heart. So with Issachar, what does this mean? That part of Issachar was with Deborah and part of Issachar with Barak? That's Judges 5:15. So when we look at Issachar, so remember the 10,000 is going to be Zebulun and Naphtali. they're going to be the ones that are with that army. But we have the princes of Issachar, who are with Deborah, even Issachar, and also Barak. So why the princes of Issachar? And it's not mentioned, of course, in chapter 4. So how do we take this? Any thoughts?
I'm trying to puzzle through this after puzzling through some things in Genesis, so I don't have a direct answer.
Okay, so anybody else with thoughts on this? How we would?
What I did see is that Barak was sent on foot into the valley. So was Sisera. He fled on foot. So maybe we should look at what this on foot is all about. As I think Ron had brought that up. Was it Ron or William?
That was Ron, but I don't agree with what he's trying to point out there. I don't. Just too obscure. So, I just don't think that you can take that application of foot that he's trying to make.
What was the application? Was it
Oh, I don't want-
self-reliance instead of God?
No. I don't want to talk about it. So anyway,
Okay.
if you look at the meaning, you'll see, but I don't want to talk about it because I know
All
where
right.
it was going. So the idea here is that he's going to be on foot, right? So he's sent on foot into the valley. This is just they're traveling on foot, right? But that's the point. There's no hidden meaning there.
Okay.
Okay. So
Just curious because right now everything is
Yeah,
popping up and I'm
because-
wondering, does this have a certain meaning for us, you know?
yeah. So anyway, I don't want to discuss it. Okay. What Ron wanted to discuss. So now, so here we have they're sent on foot into the valley. So the valley is the important thing. So what is the valley here? Where is this valley? What does the valley represent? That's the point, I think.
A crisis, a choice we must make.
Valley of decision.
Well, I don't think, I mean, yeah, that's true. There's a valley of decision, but I don't think that that's what it's symbolizing here.
Okay.
Okay, so we know that this word valley comes from the word deep, to be profound. That is, to cause to make deep, literally or figuratively. So what is the discussion about? What is this message that, just think of it in the context of the message of Parminder. So we have these symbols that are being brought here, and these are countering a false message. And here we have, so we have here on this chart, so let's look at this. Let's try to understand this. We have the Great Disappointment, October 22nd, 1844. And we have the counting of Issachar. So Judges 5:15 is going to give us Issachar as one of the tribes that we can then use as a span of time. That's the way that I understand it. And it says it was with Deborah. So Deborah is the spirit of prophecy, right? That's the way we understand this. Now we have Jeff Pippinger's born on November 7th, 1951. And what Stephen is doing is he's taking the 69 days from the midnight cry on August 15th, 1844, an inclusive count to October 22nd. And he's going to look at the fact that Jeff is 69 years old on November 7th, 2020. So how does this relate to the idea the princes of Issachar were with Deborah, even Issachar and also Barak? He was sent on foot into the valley, for the divisions of Reuben were great, thoughts of heart. So we could probably leave out the last part. Let's just do was sent on foot into the valley. And the divisions of Reuben, whatever these are. We know there's two different divisions because the divisions of Reuben is mentioned twice. And they're mentioned with great thoughts of heart on the one hand and great searchings of heart on the other, which seem to be two different ways of understanding God's word. Does anybody understand what I'm getting at here?
Could the divisions of Reuben be representative of the divisions within the movement itself?
Well, yes, that's the point. And because of Reuben, so Reuben represents a man, right? That's his standard. And
Right.
we could tie the structure of Parminder, that is, if we go from specifically November 4th, 1888, which is the end of the General Conference session in 1888,
Right.
and we count the number that we have for the tribe of Reuben, which is, I think it was 46,500.
Right.
So we counted that, and that went to Parminder's ordination, right? February 27th, 2016. So we could tie Reuben to Parminder. So Reuben has to do with a particular understanding of something. And maybe it's an understanding of something to do with some aspect of this message that there's a division on. So what's 1888 known for?
The rejection of the third angel's message.
Of righteousness by faith, right?
Correct.
And we know that Parminder is going to introduce a counterfeit. He's actually going to introduce new theology into the movement in a very clever disguise, right? He's gonna undermine the message of righteousness by faith with a counterfeit message.
Hugely.
Yeah. And what he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to have a discussion regarding the nature of Christ. He only wants to have a discussion regarding the nature of man. But in so doing, he's undermining our understanding of the nature of Christ. Correct?
Agreed.
Right. And so,
Agreed.
yeah. So, and it was very subtle, what he was doing, because there, again, it's truth mixed with error. But it was a way of attacking the nature of Christ, but not head on. And people saw the implications, and they would tell Jeff, and then Jeff would go talk to Parminder. And since Parminder wasn't really talking about the nature of Christ, he would just agree with Jeff. Right? So he didn't make direct statements regarding the nature of Christ, but the implications were there. And Jeff wasn't really following Parminder's presentations, so he didn't know. So could it have to do with the issue of understanding righteousness by faith? The divisions of Reuben have to do with the two different understandings.
That would make logical sense.
Okay. So now we have this understanding, at least tentatively, regarding the divisions of Reuben, but we have this issue of Issachar. So we've done it with Reuben, we've done it with Zebulun, we've done it with Naphtali. We have these spans of time and some other spans, which we're not going to look at right now, but we will put them all together. But now we're dealing with this Issachar, which I think would have to be correct. But the question is, what is Issachar representing? Because we're connecting it to the great disappointment. So God declares the end from the beginning, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why when we look at 1888, November 4th, and we connect it with Reuben, we're connecting it with a message given by Parminder. And that message he's going to give in 2016, after he's ordained. Because I don't know if people remember specifically, but in 2016, he's beginning this message that we can know the tares, that we can understand which are the tares and which are the wheat, and also this message regarding the movement does not sin, and this is leading to his whole idea on the nature of man. So there's a whole idea of what conversion is. You know, one of the things he said in 2017 is that basically all we have to do is be nice. And that's easy to do, that man can be nice. He didn't really understand the problem of sin. And of course, Parminder's not very nice at all, but you know, you can always imagine that you're nice. That's easy enough to do. Okay, so now we have Issachar, and Issachar we're connecting to the great disappointment. So we have to look at what's being represented at the great disappointment and what's being represented with Joe Biden being announced as a winner of the election on November 7th. And I'm driving back from Collins. I believe it was the last time I was at Collins. Maybe I was there one other time after that. I don't know, but.
Well, you have a disappointment in the sense that we were expecting Trump
Okay.
to win that.
Okay, so we have a disappointment, right? And so now how do we connect that to Jeff?
Well, he was the one that was promoting that. Well, in a sense, he did sort of waver initially when he gave the prophecy.
Yeah.
But then Trump did become president. We were still we were understanding that he would be the last president of the United States.
Right. So this would be a disappointment for this movement, November 7th. At least symbolically. So we can make this connection. So we can make this connection here. Now, so when we look at this battle, so we have the divisions of Reuben, and we have Issachar, and we have these other tribes mentioned as well. These are going to be what? What are these tribes representing in context of our history? What is it? What is this about? Because we know we have, Deborah and Barak, they're going to have this battle against Sisera, right? So Sisera really represents Parminder and his message, right? That's that papalism. So this is going to be attacked by Zebulun and Naphtali. But here they're going to mention these other tribes. And some tribes are not going to be involved, right? So they're going to mention some tribes that are going to support them, and some tribes are not. So how are we understanding these tribes? What are they representing then? Just in the general sense, how in our time, what are these tribes? They're representing numbers or spans of time, but they're connecting. They have to connect to events in the past that tie to something in the future. Now, we might put them on a date, but the question is what is it that we see here with Issachar? What is it that we saw with these other spans of time? How are we understanding these? Okay. Are these messages or aspects of truth?
I think that
Yeah.
gives a better figurative application than trying to look at this as being spans of time at the moment.
Okay, well, they are spans of time. So
I'm not saying they're not.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to consider to apply them as spans of time.
right. And so when we consider them as spans of time, they have to be connected to a message. Right. And that's what we see here in Stephen's diagram. It's connecting to something, not just to some arbitrary event, but there is a cohesiveness in understanding this span of time that makes sense, right? Because you can easily find some date in the past and connect it with some date in the present or in the recent past, and you can say, well, that is that's where we're going to connect it. So we just connect something, but you can't just connect something. You have to have a reason behind that connection. So
Well, okay, I'm going to ask you to step back for just a second.
okay.
Now, in looking at this and looking at some of the detail that we're applying in this first line that you had up on the screen.
Okay.
The question that I was asking for our consideration is, do we have the ability to apply the story of Joseph in this? Now,
What we do, right? So we can.
okay, but what the point to support what you were just saying,
Yeah.
we know from Genesis 41:50 that his two sons were born in the 7 years from the time that Joseph was brought out of prison
Mhm.
until the end of the 7 years of plenty.
Right. So they're born during the 7 years of plenty.
Okay, now, in Genesis 47:14 through to verse 24, in a 10-verse selection,
Okay, so we're going to go to Genesis
47:14 to 24.
Okay.
The first thing that we're shown here is that Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt
Mm-hmm.
and in the land of Canaan. For the corn which they bought, Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house.
Yeah. So they're going to spend their money and they're going to have to give up their land.
No, giving up the land comes down the road.
Yeah, I know, but they're going to start with the money first.
Okay, so then we see that the money failed.
Yep, that's verse 16.
So, no, that's verse 15.
Okay. Okay, verse 15. Yeah.
And when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth.
Mhm.
Symbolically, what are we seeing when money fails?
As a symbol in
Okay, historically, what do we see when money fails?
or we call it a depression or something.
Um, what happened just before the complete downfall of Nazi Germany?
Well, their money failed.
Yeah, I had to use a wheelbarrow to bring the money to buy a loaf of bread.
Exactly. So,
Well, that was before Nazi Germany. That was the Weimar Republic.
Yeah, that's earlier, but
I believe, Stephen, you'd find it happened both in the Weimar Republic and in Nazi Germany. I know that I have part of my family that lived in Germany through World War II. And they made comments to my great aunt that if it had not been for some of the things that my great aunt had been sending, that they would not have made it through.
yeah.
So,
But yeah, the devaluation of the currency was happening earlier, because that was after World War I, which helped Germany restore so that it could have World War II.
okay,
Yeah. But
so
anyway,
when the money fails, what does Joseph request of them? In verse 16. Joseph said, give your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fail. So are they not being told not only to give up, to basically give up their tools, because they honored the cattle as holy, so they were not making food from the cattle, right?
mhm.
They used them as tools, right? They didn't eat those things.
It was how they plowed, how they
How they
ground their
plowed,
grain.
that's right. They were a tool.
Yeah, so it's how they plowed, it's how they ground their grain. It's a whole bunch of things.
That's right, correct.
So in verse 17, and they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for the flocks and for the cattle of the herds and for the asses. And he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that month? No, for that year. So the economy fails. The money is worthless. The people have given up their tools. They're giving up their ability to make their living. And when that year ended, they came unto him the second year and said unto him, we will not hide it from my Lord, how that our money is spent. My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not anything left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our lands. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land be not desolate. So first he buys the tools. Now he owns the people and the land. Famine comes upon them, and they make these choices. Is this not representative then of the government in control of everything and a type of a Sunday law?
Mhm.
But we are not seeing this at this point yet.
Right. So it's progressive.
That's the point, yes.
Yeah. So we have this progression of events that's occurring. So we could look at, what happened under Trump as the beginning of the 7 years of famine with the pandemic,
Right,
right? Because you're going to have this great economy. I mean, you have to say that Trump's economy was like the 7 years of plenty.
exactly.
No matter what the Democrats say about it, the fact is the economy was booming. And then you're going to have the pandemic, which is going to destroy the economy. But it happens progressively. You're going to have the money failing, which is, what we're seeing right now, and these other types of things that progress. So when we say that the pandemic's the type of the Sunday law, it is, but it's just the first step.
Right.
I mean, and we know that we're in the time of the Sunday law since 9/11, on one line at least, but that this is really about a coming Sunday law that ultimately is going to occur, and all of these events are part of that progression.
Now, of this progression, you come to the third step. Because verse 20, and Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field, because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the border of Egypt, even to the other end thereof.
Mhm.
So rather than accepting that they had this highly agrarian nation where the people are spread out to be able to grow the grain to provide the goods, Joseph moves them all into cities where they can be more easily controlled.
So this is globalism, of course. This is the New World Order.
And this is exactly in the opposite of the advice and the counsel that Mrs. White had given.
Yeah.
Only the land of the priests bought he not, for the priests had a portion assigned them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they sold not their lands.
Mm-hmm. So they
So
represent this movement.
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Or the 144,000 or the faithful, however.
The faithful, the 144,000, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this, I believe, gives us, again, more of a microscopic examination of the line that you and Stephen were putting together yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with this situation with Judah and Issachar, and the applications being made with Trump and with Biden.
Yeah.
Because the point from yesterday that I took away is when we have this ass that is couched down, that is under two burdens, that is falling, it's no different than the ass that fell before the angel of the Lord with the drawn sword.
Mm-hmm.
We have an ass that cannot bear up under the burdens.
Now, remember, we have Islam connected with that, and we
Very true.
Islam to be involved, and it's not presently, though we have to believe that it will be when we move further down the line.
Well, exactly. And at this point, just like what was happening in the time of Joseph, Joseph purchased not only the cattle, but the flocks and the asses.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some additional symbology there that we have not really delved into. but is pertinent to what we're dealing with within the movement right now.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I don't like that I find that people do. So we look at the headlines of today, and we'll look at what's happening in Russia, or we'll look what's happening in China, and we modify or change our understanding of things to try to fit what we see happening. But I think that we can always go back to the foundation of this message and how it was laid down, what we saw in the past, and the mistakes that were made in the past in Millerite history and in our own history, in understanding where we were in the lines, and just recognize that there are things that are typical that occur in our lines, but what we originally predicted still has not occurred. That is, we have not really come to raffia. We haven't come to midnight yet. And so when we're looking at what we had predicted about Islam, that still is future. That we have a raffia connected to Islam, and we have a Panium connected to Islam. But what's happening now is just typifying those events. So the story of Balaam still has Islam involved, but we can see that the Democrats can also be represented by an ass. Does that make sense to people?
Well, yeah, isn't there one of their symbols is I think it's a mule, which is a cross between an ass and a horse.
The Democrats seem to favor Islam more than the Republicans do.
Yeah. Okay, so a horse also represents Islam, right?
Agreed.
So there you have it.
Okay, so I don't know much about the Americans. So we have a donkey that is the Democrats. Now, why is that?
Because they're stubborn.
No, that's not why. I mean, I'm just asking historically, why did they have a donkey represent the Democrats and an elephant the Republicans?
I couldn't tell you, and I'm a former Democrat.
Okay. Okay, so it says the Democrats were the first to use the donkey as their representative symbol in 1828 during the presidential campaign of Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, a popular war hero, ran his election campaign under the slogan, "Let the people rule." More entertained than provoked, Jackson used the donkey on his posters after his opponents named him Jackass, due to his populist views and stubborn nature. But the person who is most responsible for making the donkey a symbol of the Democrats and the elephant the symbol of the Republicans was a cartoonist for Harper's Weekly magazine, Thomas Nast. So Nast. So this was in 1870s or 1870, which is interesting. So Thomas Nast first used a donkey in a cartoon for Harper's Weekly titled "A Live Jackass Kicking a Dead Lion." In 1870, that symbol truly became embedded in the American consciousness as synonymous with the Democratic Party. The cartoon depicts a donkey labeled Copperhead Papers, Copperhead being a name given by Republicans to the more extreme faction of the Northern Democrats, who opposed the Civil War and called for immediate peace. Kicking a Dead Lion, labeled Honorable E.M. Stanton, Abraham Lincoln's recently deceased Secretary of War, who Nast felt was being disrespected by the Democratic press. In a testament to the influence wielded by Nast, the donkey almost instantly became the recognized symbol of the entire Democratic Party. And then it's 4 years later, Nass penned another cartoon, this time linking the elephant to the Republican Party. The animal elephant had already been featured as a Republican symbol by an Illinois newspaper during Abraham Lincoln's 1860 election campaign. Nast's drawing had the third term panic mocked the New York Herald, a paper that had been critical to Nast's close friends. So it's interesting here. We have the elephant, well, is first represented in 1860 and the donkey in 1870. And so what does 187 and 186 symbolize?
'187, of course, is July
July.
18th.
And 186 is also July 18th, in that it's 186 cardinal days from the first day of the first month to the 10th day of the seventh month, which is the 187th day of the year.
Okay.
So we have 186 from the first day of the first month in 1844 to the April 5th, 2030 is 186 years, biblical years. And then prophetic time, it's 187 prophetic years and 20 prophetic months. So you can see that 186 and 187 can symbolize the same thing. So here we have these two symbols, a donkey and an elephant. An elephant, of course, where do we first understand the symbol of elephants? Yeah, and there's just a note there on the chat regarding the 107 years from the 10th day of the seventh month. In the diagram, which we can go back to, I guess. So I'll just quickly go over there. So you see where I'm getting at here with this symbol of, so what are these symbols involved with? Like historically, if you have the elephant in 1860, that's connected with what? So just to go back, there's 107 years between the Great Disappointment and Jeff Pippinger being born. So just a note there. So if we have 1860, what's that for the elephant being connected with the Republicans?
The Abraham Lincoln, I think he was running for president
Right.
during that time.
Yeah. So it's going to be connected to Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans, which is a new party, relatively speaking. He's going to be the first Republican president. Okay. And then you have the 1870. Of course, that's a symbol for July 18th. But this still had to do with events after the Civil War, right? So can we say that these symbols are connected with the Civil War in the United States?
I would say yes.
Yeah. Okay, because that's when they first become used in connection with that history. And so then we're going to have these symbols. We're having Issachar, which is the donkey. Now the Bible doesn't have elephants in it, but what was the symbol of elephants being used for in this movement? Who was using elephants?
Tess was
Yes.
using elephants.
Okay, right. So Tess was using elephants. And what do they represent?
Probably warfare.
Okay, what kind of warfare?
Probably, well, in this case, probably political.
Okay.
I think it was a new weapon.
Yeah,
It's
they
new
were a
weapon.
new, exactly. They were a new weapon that was used, especially in Rafi and Panium.
Right. So they're dealing with the Battle of Rafi and Panium. So we have the donkey here, November 7th, but we know July or January 6th is also connected. I mean, it's not just a simple structure. Now, how many days from November 7th to January 6th? That would be what? How many days? That would be roughly 60 some days. Is that 60?
Pretty sure it's 60 and
60? I didn't hear you.
yeah, I'm pretty sure, but my math is abysmal, so.
Yeah, so it should be 60 days. Okay. So what would that, is there any connection there?
Well, that's 20 hours, I think. No, maybe it's 144. Sorry, 1,440 hours, maybe.
Yeah,
I think
you're
that's what it
correct.
is.
It's 1,440 hours. Okay. So what would that mean in connection with this line? So we can definitely add more to the line to the diagram that Stephen has, because we could add January 6th in there.
Well, 60 is a multiple of 6, and you said Reuben is connected with the man on the standard, right? And there you have the number 6 connected with the man.
Okay. Okay. So you
It's a
can do that.
stretch. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, when we go here on this diagram of Stevens, we could add the 60 days to January 6th. So anything else that we can do? So we got the 107 years in here, and then we have 60 days.
Then you have 14 days till the inauguration.
Yep, there's 14 days to the inauguration. So what would that represent?
3 sevens, 325/20 symbolizes. Maybe.
Okay. So the 2 sevens, so the 2 25/20s, that, I mean, it's 14 days. We already have, it's 2 periods of 7 days, right? So we're dealing with the story of Joseph, where they have the 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. So maybe there's something more there that we would look at. Anything else? So one thing we can say is that this is still progressive. So Joe Biden being announced a winner, when was the election?
I think that was the 3rd.
Yeah, so the 3rd. So from the time of the election, it's going to be 4 days till he's announced the winner. Now, of course, this is the media announcing him the winner. Do we have a specific date in which he officially becomes the winner? I mean, I don't know when that's accomplished. I mean, it happens quite progressively. So we have the media announcing him as the winner on November 7th. And what was that based upon? Why did they announce him as the winner on November 7th? Had they finished counting all of the states yet?
No, but they had the electoral votes, but it wasn't all brought in at this point.
Okay. So January 6th is when they had the confirmation vote, right? Because that's why you have the siege on Washington.
Right.
But on November 7th, they hadn't counted everything yet, right? There still was a lot of states that were up in the air.
That's correct. There was a bunch of states that had because they were counting and then double counting, and they wanted a correct count because there was turmoil.
Yeah, but there was some that really hadn't even been settled yet. I think by November 7th, right? There was so I thought it was premature at the time. I mean, Colin was saying that Trump was still going to win. That the count would come out in his favor. Because I was at Colin's on that day, so Colin was still denying that Trump was going to lose. So we saw a lot of people holding on to the hope that Trump was still going to win. So many people saw the declaration of Biden as the winner on November 7th as purely a political move on the part of the media.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So I don't remember exactly, when they got everything all sort of settled. It was progressive. Anyway, from the election to January 6th to the inauguration, these things happened over a period of time. Now we know we have the 65 days, an inclusive count from the election to January 6th, because Colin has marked that. Okay, so Angela says, yeah, I don't necessarily that they stole the election. I mean, I don't think, I mean, we know that there's a lot going on. So the main thing, the problem with the election is the irregularities with the election. So in a sense, they stole it. Because, all this dead Republicans were now voting Democrat. You had, of course, the fact that you had the mail-in ballots. So one of the things about Democrats is they're pretty lazy when it comes to voting. And so the fact that they had mail-in ballots made things a lot easier. But also there was ballot harvesting going on. The question is that what actually won the election? And that's something we don't know. We don't know the total numbers. We know there was irregularities.
I'm of the order of,
All this stuff is playing out through God's will, not necessarily man's will.
Yeah. So the one thing I don't,
When it happens, they get all whacked out over it. It's like, wait a second, hold on, wasn't God steering this thing? Let's just try to understand it.
right. So one of the things I don't think we should get caught in the trap is somehow that Trump was really the winner of the election. Right? That's just a Republican position. I mean, how do you decide the winner of an election? I mean, you understand what I'm saying? By going through a whole process, and the process they went through was legal, even if there was irregularities. They chose to do that. So, you can't say that Biden isn't the president or something like that. So some people tried to do that. Well, Biden's not really the president. Trump really is.
missing something. Isn't he sitting in the office? Isn't that the guy that, every time they play the TV footage, isn't that Biden that I keep seeing?
Right,
That's not
right.
Trump.
Right. So that's all I'm trying to say. Whatever you want to think about it, Biden's still the president. So Trump lost. Whether it was fair and square or not,
Correct.
it's not really the issue. The issue is that Biden is the president. And what people were trying to do is say, well, we're going to have to somehow get Trump to be back to be president in order for this prophecy of Jeff's to be fulfilled, right? But we take the position that Jeff was correct, but our understanding of what this meant was incorrect, that this is something typical, right?
Right.
Trump is the last president. He's not just the last Republican president. He's the last president of the United States, because understanding what January 6th was, if there was an insurrection It wasn't an insurrection of the Republicans, going into Washington, D.C. It was an insurrection that was created by the media primarily, and by Democrats.
I agree.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so it was overthrowing of the Constitution. But it
Yes,
was done, but it was done in a way that, it was kind of legal, right? In the sort of this,
What?
it was done through craft, through deceit. But most
Yeah, I believe that.
most Americans are going to accept that Trump is the president. There's going to be some who are going to deny it. But you see the point. The point is, when it came to the prediction and the prophecy, we don't have to somehow have Biden not be president. We just have to understand what we were predicting, and that this was something typical. It was a typical line. And in order to understand the line properly, we need to understand what was being symbolized. So part of what's happening here, this is just my perspective, as we look at this, we can see that there is this message that is one of the enemies that has been allowed to remain to test God's people. And this is this papal spirit, right? Sisera is going to manifest that, right? Parminder's movement is going to manifest that. It's going to infect our movement, and it's going to affect our understanding and interpretation of prophecy. And we have to get rid of Parminder's influence. That is, he has to be defeated. His understanding has to be defeated. And yet, much of what's happening now in the movement is actually still accepting many of the premises that Parminder laid down, particularly how we look at the lines, in that we believe that these lines are real and not typical. So if we're looking for a Sunday law in 2022, and we're looking for Trump to be reelected or somehow become president again in 2022, we would have a misunderstanding of the lines. We would still be teaching Parminder's understanding. And if we try to see Biden as illegitimate in a certain sense, we're still buying into a way of thinking that this movement has to reject. Now, Iran says Trump is still exercising a lot of influence without the title of president. Well, that may be true, but I don't know if, I would think that Trump is losing. He definitely was not able to get the support of the majority of Republicans in regard to overthrowing the election. He couldn't get the vice president to overturn the election. But he wanted it done legal anyway, so he wasn't looking for an insurrection. But I don't think that the point is that Trump is not going to become president again. That's the point. We're not going to see Jeff's prophecy fulfilled by Trump becoming president again. Because what is it that we see? We see here that Jeff's birthday is connected with this Joe Biden and this Issachar, this donkey, and this is connected to our understanding of the Civil War, right? And the symbols of July 18th.
That's right.
So we should recognize that this prophecy has been fulfilled, as Jeff predicted. It's just our understanding was incomplete. We're looking at something that's typical and not actual. So when we're going to be looking at these lines, we're going to be going through all of these lines connected with these tribes. That's the idea. And I've worked out some more, but I haven't worked them all out because I got to make them make sense. But what's the basic principle that we're using? When we connect these tribe numbers, to spans of times, to dates, what is it that we're looking for at the beginning and the end?
Aren't we looking to find events that connect to some of these dates?
Right, so they have to connect symbolically.
Right.
So you're not just going to have some arbitrary date, and say, well, here we have this date and it's this event, but there's no connection. There's no logical connection between that event and the end date. So they have to be connected. Now, could they be symbolic dates connected with some of these spans of times? That is, a date that is a symbol. So let's say you took a span of time connected to something in our history and you went back into the past and it went to, let's say, October 22nd or April 26th or something like that, even though nothing happened on that particular year on those dates. Would that be at least a symbol?
It can be, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I
Yeah,
agree.
because we do that with future dates. So it doesn't mean we always have to have an event, but we can have a date that at least is symbolically connected to the event at the end. Right? So it can't just be any date that's a symbol. It has to be a date that actually explains the event that's being marked at the end.
First day of the first month, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so those types of things. So that's what we're looking at. But then it also must fit into a structure in some way. So one of the nice things about Stephen's diagram is that it's not just some date in the past and some date, in the recent present, but it's actually has this structure, the 69 days at the beginning and the 69 years, and Jeff's birthday, of course. Right, so these become important symbols that we have to, we can't ignore them. We can't just say it, because if we just had the great disappointment in Joe Biden being announced as the winner of the November 7th election, well, people could say, well, you could have a lot of different dates that might be connected. We could go back, and pick different dates in Millerite history, and they're going to connect with some date in our history. Especially if you have lots of spans of time like we do. And, the fact that you're going to have some connect, that's kind of expected. You're going to have some. But here we have actually a structure. And one of the things that we've been doing is connecting it to people's birthdays. Now, why is that important? Why would these birthdays, we have Miller's birthday, we have Pope Pius VI's birthday, we have, my birthday, Stephen's birthday, Dwight's birthday, Iran's birthday. I mean, why these birthdays? What's the importance of the birthday as a symbol? Where do we
Well,
get?
it looks like it's a signifier or a second witness.
Okay, where's the first birthday? It's kind of a trick question, but.
I'm sorry, what do you mean, where's the first birthday?
In the Bible.
First birthday, Bible.
You look up the word birthday.
Look up the word what?
Birthday. Well, no, obviously people are born. So we're not going to count.
Pharaoh's birthday.
We have Pharaoh's birthday, right? It came to pass the third day, which was Pharaoh's birthday. So what do we have here as a symbol?
Have an interesting 40-20 or 42, 3.5 months. 60 years.
Okay. Yeah. And you have a third day mentioned. Is third day significant as a symbol?
Yeah.
Dwight, is it significant?
Very definitely.
Okay. Because Dwight did a study on the third day, right? And we know it shows up in, and when Tabo presented the prediction before midnight, this was the first one that he uses is in the story of Joseph, dealing with the butler and the baker's two dreams and the symbol of the third day. So he takes this as the prediction before midnight. One of the symbols is this. He also goes to the 3 days at the river Ahava on the 12th day of the first month, after this 3 days that they leave the river Ahava. But we also have the third day at the end of that. There's 3 days from when they called to repent for their marriage to their strange wives. And so we've used 3 days as a symbol in this movement, which is a call to repentance, right? But now we also have this symbol of birthday. So, I mean, this is Pharaoh's birthday. I know Jehovah's Witnesses, they make a whole case out of this because the only birthdays mentioned in the Bible are Herod's birthday and Pharaoh's birthday, and they're both bad people, so they say we shouldn't celebrate birthdays. But do we have another birthday that's not directly related to his birthday, but that appears to be connected to a birthday in the Bible? And where would that be? So I wouldn't put this as the first birthday. Okay, well, Christ's baptism, okay. How about if we go to Noah?
Yeah, especially Noah's.
Okay, right. So we know that it's going to be a connection connected with Noah.
Well, there's a very tacit reference here.
Right.
Because you're dealing with the 600 to the 601st year.
Right. So we have the 600th year of Noah's life in the second month, right?
Right.
And then we know that this flood, it ends progressively, right? But it's going to be, where is this? And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, in the first day of the month. And so we're going to know that Noah was 600, and then he's going to be 601, right? Because this is counting in reference to Noah's age.
Right.
And so the first day of the first month, in a symbolic sense, would represent Noah's birthday. Whether he was actually born on the first day of the first month, and that's what they're counting from, I don't know. But and this, of course, is not under inspiration, but in Uncle Arthur's Bible story book, they said this was Noah's 601st birthday, and they made the day special by removing the roof of the ark. So, obviously that's not an inspired book, but
Right.
the implication here is that this is his 600th year that this happens. And so, in a sense, this is a type of birthday. And maybe that's how they counted their births. Maybe they always counted from, just the month that you're born in or something like that. Not particularly the day. I don't know. But so what do we have here as a symbol then with this birthday? The question is it a prophetic marker?
Well, there's many things that are associated with it. Like you said, the number 600, the day, first month.
Yeah.
So there are several symbols that are ingrained in this little story there.
Yeah. So birthdays become prophetic markers, and they mark what?
An event. And then, oh, wait.
Well, they mark what kind of event? What is it that they're marking?
Well, with Noah, it was marking the settling of the ark, right?
Okay. How about the beginning of a period?
Yes. Okay, I can buy that.
And especially here, we have the first day of the first month. So we can sort of say that a birthday can mark that start of something. So
Right.
so that's why when we count 18,720 days from a birthday, because God declares the end from the beginning, we're going to be tied to something that's going to be significant as a symbol. It's going to tie the beginning to the end. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what it is.
So it's a simple thing. That's why these birthdays are here. Doesn't make the people, special or anything. They happen to be used as a symbol. Their birthdays can be used as a symbol. They can be, of course, significant people in the movement and so forth. But the idea is that, when we count for Miller's birthday and we see a symbol there, right? Then we have to, we have to mark it, right? I mean, it has to be part of a line and the beginning of a line, but then we can get to the end of it. All right. So that's what we're doing. That's why we're looking at these, because this is the series on understanding the lines, right? That's primarily the importance of this series, or what we're trying to do. So, when we look at something like, the birthday even of Pope Pius, it's going to be on December 25th. Well, December 25th is already a symbol. It's going to be 1717. Well, a doubling, right? 17 is also a symbol, right? So that's something that shows up. Story of Joseph. So you're going to have all of these different symbols, but it's only because they come together in these structures that they actually can then we can understand what they mean. And just because you can create a structure doesn't mean that you have a correct understanding of a structure unless you understand how it fits symbolically, right? So people have created structures that are correct, but interpreted them incorrectly.
Well, that's our history.
Right, that's our history, that's what we do. So in order to understand these correctly, we need to look at everything. We pull all the lines together. We look at line upon line. We look at wheel within wheel. We come to understand where we are in the lines. And then we can understand what it is we're looking at. Doesn't mean we can predict what's going to happen on an event in the future, but at least we have some idea that when an event occurs, we can understand its significance because it's fit into part of a structure, these lines.
And as watchmen, it gives us something to actually look for. We might not see it in the exact way that we're thinking it, but we have the symbology, and if we're marking down the symbology of the things that are transpiring during that event, we can get a closer handle on it. That's why I say we can't figure it out until it goes by.
Right. Okay. So we're going to continue this, I guess, tomorrow, because there's still, and I'm going to try to get some time today. I got a pretty busy day ahead of me, but I'm try to get some of these lines pulled together so that we can understand this section of Judges. Okay. Any final comments before we close with prayer?
Just another study with a lot of balls in the air.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of things that we haven't had settled down and put in place yet. Okay, let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are so thankful for the light that has been shining upon our path, and for the time that we had to study, and for the way that you lead and direct the hearts and minds of people in this movement. And we just ask, Lord, for your continued watch care over us. We pray, Lord, that we can, as we progress in our understanding, that we can reflect your character and that we can be a witness to those around us. Be with us now, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.